Saturday, June 25th, 2022, while most of Homestead was asleep, a single gunshot echoed through a quiet neighborhood. One shot. That's all it took. That's all it took to end a man's life. One pull of the trigger, and a father, a partner, a human being, was left bleeding in an alleyway while the person he shared a home with stood just steps away. Before this happened, you're going to get to learn a little bit about the relationship between the defendant, Daisy Lynn, and the victim, Pedro Jimenez, as well as what happened leading up to that moment. The evidence is going to show you that the two of them, they've been together for 9 years. It was on and off, but in fact, they had 2 children together. And you're going to learn it was an unhealthy relationship. But even though it was an unhealthy relationship, they all lived together as a family. But you're going to see Mr. Jimenez, he wasn't always home. And why is that? Well, he was a truck driver. He was out on the road. And just like in any relationship, it wasn't perfect. It had its problems. There were arguments, anger, and even jealousy. So, on Friday, June 24th of 2022, while being back in town from work, Mr. Jimenez began to have suspicions that his partner was cheating. So, he decided to ask and see whether or not that was true. The defendant ends up denying it. They go on about their day. They continue to act as a family. In fact, you can see surveillance footage of them that night coming back together to the home as a family, together with the children. Now, the video later on that night, that's when the murder occurs. But as that night progresses, Mr. Jimenez can't stand the fact that potentially his partner is cheating on him. So what does he do? He decides to go over to a friend's home. And while he's there at that friend's home, you're going to hear from the medical examiner. He was drinking, he was smoking weed, and he had cocaine in his system. But while he was there, who shows up to pick him up? The defendant. And she comes to that home and demands that he leaves there and comes back home with her. So he complies. He goes back home with her. Now, the night progresses. It's Saturday, June 25th. And you're going to find out that Mr. Jimenez and the defendant, they decide to step outside of the home to go into the porch. Miss Lane, she wanted to smoke a cigarette. But interesting enough, she brought out a firearm with her. While the two of them were outside, the evidence is going to show you, in fact, Miss Lynn tells police officers that when she saw Mr. Jimenez out there, he had a look at the trail. So she told him and confirmed that she had cheated on him. Now, Mr. Jimenez, rightfully upset, he doesn't pull out any weapons, he doesn't hit the defendant, but instead, he threatens her by telling her, "You're going to sleep outside tonight." He's going to lock the doors. And you're going to hear in evidence that this wasn't the first time that that had occurred, and that she didn't like having to stay outside. So, in a fit of rage, she pulled out the gun, pointed it at the victim, and the facts will show that when the defendant pointed the gun at Mr. Jimenez, he had turned around and was running away in fear of Miss Lynn. The defendant then pulls the trigger and fires one shot. And the surveillance you see this week, it's going to confirm that. It's going to confirm that the victim was running away. You're going to hear the 911 calls. You're going to get to see the body on camera. And on that body on camera, you do see Mr. Jimenez take his last breath. This week, you're going to hear from several civilians. You're going to hear from officers. You're going to hear from homicide investigators and even CSI personnel. They're going to tell you about how this investigation led to that defendant. You're going to get to see the defendant's text messages. And you're going to be presented with evidence on how the defendant acted after the shooting and how that behavior doesn't show or line up with self-defense. At the end of this trial, after all the evidence has been presented, the state is going to ask you to render a verdict that justice demands. Guilty. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Alcala. Mr. Ross.